Patrick Bet-David has the largest business-centered YouTube channel where he gives advice about business, leadership, and entrepreneurship. In 2020, he wrote a book called Your Next 5 Moves, where he compares business to chess, in that to become a master, you need to think 5 moves ahead in order to anticipate your opponent's moves, prevent burnout, and live a fulfilling life. For those who would think less than 5 moves ahead, Pat warns that you may be unable to anticipate your opponent's moves and take advantage of opportunities as they arise. To those who want to plan more than 5 moves ahead, he warns that you risk paralysis by analysis. The 5 moves build upon one another and therefore need to be done in order. Each move builds upon the previous one and provides structure for the next one. Now, in all of Pat's videos, I've never seen him without a suit on, so it would only be appropriate if I wore one as well. So while I change, if you guys would subscribe to help me overthrow the YouTube algorithm overlord, I'd be really grateful. Now let's get started. Move 1 is to master knowing yourself. Mastering yourself means knowing who you want to be and what kind of life you want to live. How much money do you want to make? Where do you want to live? What kind of work do you want to do? What are your values? To help you know what you want, it's important to know what motivates you. Pat gives 4 categories of drive: advancement, individuality, madness, and purpose. Those who are driven by advancement are always looking for the next raise or the next promotion. If you're driven by individuality, you're probably looking for things like recognition or a lifestyle. People who are motivated by madness desire fame and power, are excited by competition, and desire control. Finally, those who have purpose as their motivation want to make a difference in the world, change or create history, and want to help others. Now, who do you want to be? If you're watching this, you probably love business. So it's important to ask yourself, do you want to be an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur? Being an entrepreneur brings a lot of fame and accolades if you have a successful business, but there's also a lot of risk involved. Intrapreneurs, on the other hand, don't get the same accolades that an entrepreneur may get, but it doesn't make him lesser than an entrepreneur. Intrapreneurs work for the entrepreneur, but have the same mindset, same motivation, and the same desire for the business to succeed. Pat uses Google as a really great example. Google is a breeding ground for intrapreneurs because they encourage people to develop their own projects. For example, Google AdSense is something that was developed by an entrepreneur in Google. Because of their desire to innovate, entrepreneurs are rewarded handsomely in one way or another. Once you've decided who and what you want to be, you need to go out and achieve it. There's multiple ways for you to do this. To put simply, you need to go and put in the work to do it. And that can be hard. Some suggestions that Pat gives to help you along the way is to fuel your ambition and your motivation by the hate of those in your past. Those who said that you couldn't do it or that it was impossible. You can take those feelings of anger that those memories bring and use it as fuel for your fire. Another hack that Pat gives to help you speed your growth is to live your future truth. For example, if you wanted to be a professional athlete, think about how you would act, how you would train, how you would eat as a professional athlete, and start doing that now. Living your future truth or acting now how you would when you've achieved or become what you want to be will help increase your growth exponentially because you'll be developing the habits that will get you there. This doesn't just work in athletics, but it can work financially and in business. You can also emulate a hero. Look at what they do and copy it. Copying the actions that made them successful, you are following their path, and that can help you with your growth. Next, it's important to know why you're doing what you're doing. Your why gives you your reason. Sometimes your why will give you your motivation, but it won't always do so. It's also good to know that your why won't always stay the same. It's normal for your why to change as you grow and improve. Typically, your why will fall into 4 different categories, and Pat names these as survival, status, freedom, and purpose. As your purpose changes, you'll either move up or down these categories. Your goal is to have your why move up those categories. Move number 2 is mastering your ability to reason. Mastering the ability to reason is crucial to being able to plan 5 moves in advance because it takes deliberate, conscious choice to act instead of react to problems that arise and create a plan for growth. A key part to being able to reason is developing the reason to process. Processing requires you to slow down and figure out what the problems are. What went wrong, where, why, and how. Don't worry, you'll never have to guess the who of the problem because the answer will always be you. Great processors always take responsibility because it takes them out of a helpless victim mindset into the mindset of someone who can take control and make change. If something goes wrong in a project, you need to figure out what you can do next time to prevent it. Did you train your team well enough? Did you explain what needed to happen? Whatever it is, by taking responsibility, you can figure out what the problem is and take steps to prevent it. So whenever something goes wrong in your organization, take responsibility for it and move forward. As you process issues, it's important to learn from your mistakes. Remember that a fool is someone who does something multiple times the same way, but expects a different result. As you learn from your mistakes, it's important to figure out what really went wrong and why. Pat calls this solving for X. This isn't as easy as it may appear. To truly find the root of the problem, you may have to ask yourself what the problem is multiple times to find what the root of the problem is. To help you with this, on page 82, Pat gives 5 questions to identify what the real issue is. Once you have solved for X, decide upon 3 different actions you can take immediately to counter the problem. As you process issues, the actions you take afterwards will generally fall into 2 different categories. A, you will either take offensive actions, which help your company grow, or B, you will take defensive actions, which will help your company from shrinking. There is a time and a place for both, so it's important as you're processing to decide which action is better for your situation. The most important thing about processing is to not go against your non-negotiables. If a competitor is doing something that may be going against the law, is immoral, or goes against your values, don't stoop to his level to try to compete with him. Find a way to beat him at the game without betraying who you are. But if you're in a situation where that's not possible, then maybe you shouldn't be playing that game. Move number 3 is master building the right team. No matter how talented, capable, or hardworking you are, if you want to create massive growth, you can't do it by yourself. You will need to create a team. Teams help you leverage your time, so you can do things that you want to do and things that only you can do. Even if you don't want to hire employees, which is something we'll talk about a little bit later, all successful people have counselors. Your counselor should be someone who has the same values as you, but a different temperament. That way they can balance you. So if you're really hot-headed and rash, then you should find someone who is more thoughtful and cool-tempered. But no matter what, be sure to find someone who is loyal to you. Nothing will hurt more than someone who has betrayed your trust. So be careful before you put someone in your inner circle. Now let's talk about hiring people. One thing that is important to understand before hiring someone is to know what you can offer them. Why should they work for you? Pat says that if you're a startup, you should be extra careful as you answer these questions. What benefits can you give them? How will their life be better because they are around you? Are people winning because they are associated with you? You need to remember that you are constantly selling yourself to your team. If they don't see why they should be with you, then they're gonna leave. In order to attract the right people to your team, you need to provide motivation. One way is to offer equity in your company, and another is to create some sort of bonus structure. Either way, your compensation plan should motivate them to work hard and to think as an owner. This compensation plan should have clear goals that require results before they are compensated. Now let's talk about hiring people. As stated before, by hiring people, you are able to create time to do things that you want to do or things that only you can do. To help in this process, Pat gives 5 questions that you need to ask yourself before you hire someone. How many types of references did you call? Is this person likable but lacks a significant skill set? Did you conduct a thorough background check to see if there's anything in that person's past that might be a red flag? Did you question anything iffy on the resume? Did the contract you offer have a 90 to 120 day probationary period? If you don't take the time to answer these questions, you may hire the wrong people, which can cost you and your company a lot in the long run. As you hire, be sure to communicate clearly what your expectations are for this employee, what work their role entails, and the standards and values that your company holds, and what will happen if they fail to meet those expectations. If someone isn't meeting the standards, then you either need to lower your standards or fire them. This brings into question whether or not standards and values are important. Pat thinks so. He says that having values will inspire your actions and the actions of those in your organization. And those actions create company culture. So what kind of culture do you want? Do you want to have a culture of honest, hardworking, team-oriented people? If you and your team don't deliberately set up and follow principles and values, then over the course of time, a culture will form that may not be the one that you want. You must constantly remind yourself and the people around you what these principles are. You must take effort to protect your principles. If there is something in your business and life that violates your principles, you need to cut it out. Whether it's a person or an attitude, it doesn't matter. Inevitably, you will hire someone that will not be a good fit for your company. There will come a day when you need to fire. Pat says that firing is kind of like a breakup. If you put off doing it, it can hurt you. But if you do it wrong, that can also hurt you. To help make it easier, Pat has 6 techniques to help become an effective terminator. These are: fire gently. Don't purposely make it a worse experience than it already is. Get right to the point. You don't need to make an excuse, it's just not working out. Be firm but gentle. Get to the point but don't steamroll over them. And don't play debate. Acknowledge the other person's feelings. Work to understand what they are feeling and help them understand that you get it. Have a good exit strategy. If you hired someone, then you should be there when they're fired. Make it an exit interview and guide them out the door. Finally, talk about the other person's strengths. Pat says that you should act as a coach and tell them what they're good at and how they can use that. One more thought on the subject of firing people. Pat says that if you need to fire someone, you shouldn't have hired them in the first place. The goal of creating a team is to replace you. The more that your company requires you, the less valuable it actually is. Because of this, Pat says to always have a replacement plan for you and for the members of your team. On pages 123 through 124, Pat gives 6 strategies on how to train and transfer skills. As you create your team, find places that you can replace yourself. Ask yourself if there's something that you can hire someone else to do. Maybe there's someone who can be trained to do a task. Be sure to encourage growth in your company. If people are improving themselves, then they become more valuable and more capable. One way to encourage growth is to allow friction within your company. What Pat means by this is allowing people to call each other out if they're not following the company principles. And that includes you. Have your employees tell one another how they can improve. Chances are they will probably see something that you can't. Another way to encourage growth is by talking behind people's backs. Pat explains that if there's something that you want someone to do better at, then you should go to their colleagues and tell them that that person is already good at it. Eventually, this gossip will get back to the original person, which will give them a positive reputation, and he or she will work to live up to it. Part of creating a team, Pat explains, is knowing how to trust someone. Now, you're not going to trust everyone equally. To help you to know how to trust someone, Pat gives 4 categories of trust, and these are strangers. You have zero experience with these people, but they seem likable and trustworthy. Endowed. These are people who have been recommended to you by someone and have a great resume. You still need to be careful because things on a resume can be fake. Next is trusted. These are people that you have personal experience with. And finally, running mate. Running mates are your best friends in business. You can trust them to give good advice and to help you in your journey. Unfortunately, as you become more successful, there are going to be more people who are going to try to screw you. Take the time to place people that you meet in each of these categories. And remember that each person won't always stay in the same category. Someone who's a stranger may become a running mate, and unfortunately, some of your running mates may betray you. The final point I want to bring up is to figure out how to appreciate people. The golden rule is to love others as you love yourself, but an even more important rule in business is to appreciate others how they want to be appreciated. Familiar yourself with the 5 love languages: physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, and quality time. As you work to appreciate others how they want to be appreciated, people will know and feel that you truly appreciate them. On top of the 5 love languages, Pat gives 9 love languages for entrepreneurs, but I'm going to let you read the book to find out what those are. Move number 4 is hitting the subscribe button. Just kidding. Move number 4 is mastering your ability to scale. As CEO, it's critical that you understand how to run and scale your business. Pat explains that businesses typically go through 4 phases: formulation, survival, momentum, and plateau. No matter what phase of business you're in, it'll take capital to scale. So ask yourself, how are you going to raise funds? Will you take out a loan? Will you find an investor? Will you borrow from friends or family? Will you dip into your own personal savings? Before you decide on how to get funds for your business, Pat lists 10 questions to ask yourself before you raise money. Should you even raise funds? Could you get by with your own money? If you couldn't raise funds, how would you make your business work? If the answer is that you don't need funds, but that they will help you gain momentum quicker, this will be even more attractive to investors. How will this money be converted into growth? What does the ideal investor look like? Do you want somebody who just gives you money and leans back, or are you looking for an advisor? If you want to have total control of your company, to do so, you may need to give up capital to keep equity. Do you want accountability? Venture capitalists tend to want to make suggestions. Have you done enough research about your industry? Doing the proper research shows that you're serious about growing your business. What makes your business model different? How are you going to stand out in the crowd? Have you done the math? Do you really know the value of your company? Bad math equals no investors. Have you decided upon an exit strategy? Investors want to know that they'll be able to make a sizable return in about 5 years. Now that you've gotten the funds, it's time to talk about growth. In general, there's 2 kinds of growth: linear growth and exponential growth. Linear growth comes from doing the everyday things, while exponential growth comes through breakthroughs. As CEO, your tasks break down into 4 different categories: 2 linear and 2 exponential. So let's start with linear growth. The first linear growth job that you have is to create operating systems. Creating systems help the different parts of your business run more effectively. Creating systems is typically the least exciting part of your job, but is one of the most important things that you will do. This is because without systems, exponential growth will overwhelm you and cause your business to collapse. To further impress the importance of systems, Pat gives 5 reasons to implement systems in your business. These are: what can be measured, can be scaled and improved. You will know when and where to direct your energy. You can stop micromanaging people and start empowering them. Your employees won't be able to influence you with hype. Finally, you'll simultaneously become more effective and have more freedom. Clearly, although not the most exciting, creating systems is critical to helping things run smoothly. The second linear growth responsibility is business development and sales. This comes down to simply creating networks that help you and your business to grow. Now let's get on to the fun jobs. The first exponential growth responsibility is to create the next innovative campaign. This involves the creation and execution of an innovative program that leads to massive growth. This could be a massive sale such as Black Friday. This could be offering lifetime coverage in an industry that doesn't offer it. The biggest factor is to think outside the box. The second responsibility that leads to exponential growth isn't that obvious. This responsibility is to develop potential leaders. You won't always be there to create the new campaign, develop a new product, or even run your company. Work to help people grow in their area. Find potential leaders and help them to become successful ones. As you do so, your company will grow exponentially because you won't be the only one trying to do so anymore. The added effort from the leaders that you train will compound upon itself and provide incredible growth. One tactic to help people is to pressure people to perform until they become immune to it. Constantly ask questions about what they want to be and hold them accountable to it. If they don't act in a way that leads them to where they want to be persistent and bother them about it. Push them to be better. 7 ways to hold people accountable. The first is not being afraid to hold people accountable. Next, ask why and listen to their response. Make specific, measurable statements and not general runs. Provide clear metrics and create clear incentives. Coach people through the workflow. Know the role that each person plays on the team. Finally, finish with empathy and heart. As you pressure people to improve, they won't just get better, but they will start to pressure each other and help each other grow. As you build your team, remember to learn how to speak to lions. Lions are powerful people who naturally intimidate others because of their drive. Lions can be hard to understand, but they can be game changers when they're on your side. Learning to speak to them will help you direct their energy in a positive direction that will help create growth. But if you don't learn to speak to them, you run the risk of chasing them away, which will be at a huge loss to you. Next, let's talk about momentum. Momentum is critical to your company. Work to make it your lover and remember not to abuse it. If you become cocky, momentum will leave you for someone who has the discipline to use it correctly. In order to gain momentum, find ways to increase your speed without losing quality. Pat names 4 different kinds of speed and talks about how to use them correctly. First is functioning speed. Functioning speed is the support system for your team. Ask yourself how you can train your team better, or if there is someone you can add to your team to help it work better. Maybe there's someone that you need to remove from your team. Second is processing speed. To put it simply, processing speed is how quickly you can get something from A to Z. Ask yourself if there's something you can do to make ordering, manufacturing, shipping, etc. faster. 3 is expansion speed. This is how fast you're developing new products, moving into new industries, or making acquisitions. Ask yourself what you can do to eliminate bottlenecks. Finally, timing speed. To put it simply, when. By answering this question, you will be able to figure out how to better time the markets. Momentum can be incredibly helpful for growth, but it can also be really dangerous. Momentum and growth can make an entrepreneur really cocky and prideful and lead him to do things that could be detrimental to his company and reputation. Remember that it takes 20 years to build a reputation and only 20 seconds to destroy it. In order to keep your ego in check, work to minimize your regret. As you make decisions, take time to imagine what the future consequences could be. Is there something that you would regret doing? Is there something that you would regret not doing? By working to minimize regret, you can avoid making harmful decisions of action or inaction and lead a much happier, more fulfilling life. Now, it's important to remember that you don't know everything. Work to find coaches to help guide you in your journey. In general, there are 3 types of expertise. The first comes from study. The next comes from being around someone who's done what you want to do. And the third is by expertise, which means that they have done what you want to do. All 3 kinds of expertise are valuable, but expertise has the greatest value. Move number 5 is the master power plays. It's important to remember that there will always be a Goliath in your industry. Goliaths are bigger than you, have more capital and more experience. However, because they are the biggest, they may grow complacent and comfortable and stop trying as hard as they did in the past. This is good for you because it leaves you room to make your move. Beating your Goliath is going to be really hard, so you're going to have to be able to endure pain. Here are 6 things that Pat thinks you should know before facing Goliath. 1, you'll be afraid. 2, you'll have panic attacks and anxiety. 3, you're going to be bullied and laughed at. 4, you're going to need to be delusional. 5, you're going to have to work 10 times harder than you think. 6, you're going to need to stay healthy in order to have the energy to compete. Beating Goliath is hard, but you can do it. Being bigger has led Goliath to be comfortable around you. This leads them to stop trying as hard and to stop innovating over time. Remember, stay on your toes. Keep working, keep innovating, and stay paranoid. As you work to take down the Goliath, people are going to try to destroy your reputation by controlling what others think of you. Because of this, it's important to control your narrative. Use social media to get yourself out there and show who you are. If a competitor says X about you, then use social media to prove them wrong. It doesn't matter which social media platform it is. What's most important is that you control what others see. While you work to control the narrative, you should be shameless about promoting yourself. Be you and be proud of it. Make predictions and be humble whether or not you're correct. People can either make up their minds about you from what they hear from others or what they see from you. Which would you rather be? Taking down Goliath takes a lot of focus and energy, so it's important to cut out the noise. If something isn't in line with your goals, then you should consider cutting it out of your life. Don't be discouraged by incremental growth. Sudden spurts of growth happen infrequently, but as you consistently work to create incremental growth, you will outgrow your competitors, which will lead you to overtake them. For more ways to beat Goliath, you can turn to pages 224 to 225 to get Pat's list of 12 ways to beat Goliath. At this point, Pat says something that's really interesting. He says to study mobsters. Mobsters are masters of business, negotiations, and sales because if they aren't, then they die. As you run your business, it's important to learn how to prepare for a meeting. After studying mobsters, Pat has created a list of 7 steps to take to prepare for a meeting. Consider the other party's needs, wants, and frustrations. Anticipate what the other party will say. Develop an outline for what you will say. Role-play the meeting several times to prepare for different outcomes. Ask trusted advisors to point out your blind spots. Put yourself in the best possible frame of mind. And finally, develop a reputation on over-delivering on your product. These steps will help you properly prepare for a meeting so that you can have the best possible outcome. Next, Pat says that sales should be easy. He explains that this is because sales is simply a transference of conviction and emotion. When the person you're selling to feels the same way as you do about your product or service, then they are naturally going to buy it. You will know that you truly believe in your product or service because selling will become second nature to you. As you sell, you are undoubtedly going to have negotiations. It's important to remember that in negotiations, the person with the least amount of need will have the most power. If you need to make the sale, then that puts the other party in position to get the best deal. This is because they could go somewhere else, which will put pressure on you to give them the most beneficial outcome. The best way to not need in a negotiation is to have options. Keep multiple sales in the pipeline. That way, if one falls through, it's not the end of the world for you. But no matter what happens in a negotiation, make sure the other party feels that they've won. This will give them positive feelings towards you and make them want to do more business with you in the future. From negotiation, Pat turns to talking about gaining power. In order to gain power, Pat gives a simple formula. This is outwork, out-improve, out-strategize, and outlast. As you find what the 4 O's mean to you, you'll have greater power and ability in your life. Now, it is time to talk about your job as a leader. Your job as a leader is to understand what motivates and drives other people. To figure this out, ask them and listen to their response. It is not your job to fix people. Instead, it is your job to ask questions to figure out what is wrong and then nudge people in the right direction. To put it simply, people don't need to be fixed. They need to be guided. As you build your business, success has to really matter to you. If it doesn't, you won't be able to handle the pain that comes from growing your business. Remember that every time you level up, you start at the bottom again. Pat uses the example of school to illustrate his point. The person who's the king of elementary school becomes the baby of middle school. The top dog of middle school finds himself at the bottom of the totem pole in high school. The same is true in business. As you level up, you will find yourself in a whole new pool of water with bigger fish than you that you will have to outgrow. Unfortunately, I've had to cut out a lot of stories and much of Pat's wisdom in order to summarize this book. And in order to get the most out of Pat's wisdom, I highly suggest that you read the book for yourself. Have a great day. Peace.